Hi, I'm Das Smith, and today's video was a community remote viewing chat recorded on 2nd of December 2022. Now, we discussed lots of interesting topics, including front-loading, telepathy, RV methods, CRV, ethics, and lots of great tips and advice from the RV community. Now, this is the last DAS chat of 2022, so there will be more to come in 2023. Have a great Christmas break, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year. Namaste. Let the people in. So for the new people here, it's an open chat tonight, so there's no guests, because quite a lot of the time we have guests on these. So we'll just throw some topics around and people can ask questions, usually by putting up your hand using the reactions button, especially if someone's talking. But if you feel you have a relevant point to comment on what they're talking about, it's okay to kind of like chime in as well, as long as everyone does it respectfully. We'll try to limit, if everyone's going on a, like a longer topic, we'll try to limit that if we can to a maximum of 5 minutes or so for each person, so that everyone gets a chance to speak. And that's pretty much it, really. What if you're too shy to actually say your comments or any of the questions you have using your voice, feel free to also use the chat window. You can type comments up in there, and I haven't got it open at the moment, but I'll open that up, and we'll try to catch any comments and stuff in there as well. As you guys know, this is being recorded, so we'll put it online as well, so bear that in mind. And yeah, it's just here to have fun and all learn from each other, really. But yeah, if you want, Deborah, we could start with you sent me a remote viewing session, and you had a question about front loading.
Yeah. Did you want me to show the session?
If you want to, yeah, and if you can tell us what your question is as well.
Okay, so part of the problem was that I don't know how to show my screen on Zoom, so I sent it to you.
I can share it for you if you want.
Yeah. Cool, that'd be so great, because I tried to learn how to share on Zoom, and I don't know, I just wasn't able to quite figure it out. And maybe it's because I was just on an iPad. It might be easier with a computer, so that might have been part of the problem. And I haven't tried it again, but this was my session for September, October, and November, because I was noticing that up until this start of this session, I had been trying to do just 1 month in advance. But I was finding I was getting up to 3 months in advance. So I thought, well, why don't I just do 3 months in advance? So I started, and I got this. Now, what this question is about is kind of the last page of this. If you want to scroll, can you scroll through, and we'll show them that's the ideogram. Okay. And then
where do you want me to go to? The last page?
Not that last, that page. Okay, not this one. Next one after the photographs, and then one more. There, that was it, the one before. That one. So this page is the last page. And I just want to show you, okay, down at the bottom, there's a photograph, a screenshot of Alex Mukuris. He's a lawyer from London, and he does military and political analysis with his partner, another Alexander Christoforou from Greece. And they have a channel called The Duran on YouTube. And they're talking a lot, of course, about the Ukraine. So here, when I have this front loading, if you can see, I put front loading : because after I finished this reading, I realized I was front loaded. And this was the first time I'd ever realized that. And I thought, well, I'm going to note this. I'm going to mark down what I think is the front loading. And I'm going to add this to my technique. So from now on, I'm going to put a section for front loading. And if I find that I was front loaded, I'm going to make a note of it. So I found I was front loaded because I've been watching the Duran, and I was watching them talk about destroyed forces and these events in Kherson, and the Russians were really destroying the Ukrainians, according to the Duran. And then there was this bizarre amphibious attack on the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. And in my in the visuals, if you want to look at the photographs, it's really interesting. So if you want to go back to the helicopter, and just we'll go through and I'll discuss it, because the first visual I got was this helicopter, and it was red, and it had the yellow marking on it. And I thought, well, that's China, I think. I put AOL, looks Chinese. And then I wondered why China would be in the Ukraine war, because if it's a war, I mean, what am I seeing China for is why I'm wondering. So then in the next visual, on the next page, I'm getting what I realized, okay, this is front loading. I'm seeing the bodies that the Duran were talking about. They were talking about a meat grinder, and the generals were actually distressed by the amount of people that were dead. So here I'm seeing them. And again, on the next page, I'm seeing the river, the Dnieper River, and the dead bodies in the mud. And then on the next page, I see, and in my ideogram, there's a very specific structure that is very complex, like a computer motherboard. So this is possibly the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. And I'm seeing that the shells are not hitting any of the buildings at all. They're just hitting the ground, and the smoke is coming up off the ground. So I'm asking in the AOL if it looks like they're not really trying to hit this thing. It looks like they're pretending. So I couldn't figure out what was going on. I'm wondering why China's there. I'm wondering why I'm seeing them not really trying to hit the Zaporozhye, and who's shelling it anyway, I'm wondering. So then if you go back to that last page, it's really interesting what happens, because this session was on August the 30th. And then I'm watching the Duran on September 2nd, and they start to talk about these Vostok military exercises and that fact that China and India are there. And all of a sudden I realize, okay, that's why I'm seeing this helicopter. And then on September 3rd, on the Duran, they're talking about how the Ukraine admits that they were shelling Zaporozhye, the nuclear power plant, when nobody knew who was doing that. And so I feel I got a good hit, but I thought maybe what I was getting was a combination of the defeat at Kherson and the war games at Vostok. And I realized I was front loaded. But the other thing is, I know that this Vostok games were in the news, because I was talking to my mom and she said she heard about it. So it was in major world news. But the fact that I found out about it on the Duran, I've had a couple of other of these where I found my hit on an obscure place, but then it'll also be in the news. And I'm wondering what this is about. Like, I'm asking myself, like, does the universe know I'm watching the Duran? And then I'm going to get the answer, like, from the Duran? Like, how? That's what I'm wondering about the front loading, because I was watching the Duran and then it's like I got entangled with them, like, and I'm starting to get information specific to them. And, there may be some experiments that could be done, is what I'm thinking, in terms of rapport with a tasker. Even though I'm my own tasker in this, it's like they almost became my tasker. So these are all kinds of guesses and thoughts I'm having around this about front loading and how that's influencing the information I'm getting. And how does the universe know that I'm looking at this specific two guys and the information that they're going to be getting? And that's kind of my question. And then in one of the next readings, like the third reading, reading session. So the next session after this was where I see there's warming centers, and I can hear they're mobile. They're being moved around by large, heavy vehicles that you can hear the heavy vehicles. And then I'm seeing a warming center. I'm seeing a family. I'm doing my first subject probes, that I'm really getting information about the subjects. And again, it's a little bit specific, because I realized that this was a ballistic trajectory for the problem with the energy crisis, and that I didn't really need to look at too much more in RV because everything else was sort of going to be pulled along with this particular problem that I was seeing. So if I know that this is happening, I can kind of extrapolate and infer what else is going to be happening based on that one important thing. So somehow the universe directed me to the most specific thing that's going to show me what else is happening. You know, like it gave me a important piece of information. And that's what I asked for, you know. So, and then in the third session, I started to go a little bit askew. I started to fly off in some weird direction to a volcano, which apparently has happened. But this volcano, again, within a day, I'm looking at Twitter and here I'm seeing the characters I was seeing in the session and the volcano. And it's a bunch of students, you know, exploring this volcano. And again, I'm wondering why the universe knows I'm going to see this on Twitter. You know what I mean?
Before we go any further, what with this remote viewing session and the ones you're talking about, what are you trying? What is the target? If we can.
So the target is at the top. I'm viewing the various catastrophic or impactful events, significant or publicized people, important or highlighted locations or cities, and special interest stories that will appear in world and major and local news for the next 3 months. And
okay.
Yeah, so I'm pretty broad in what I'm asking for, and then I'm finding the way I'm getting the answers in those categories, but the way that I'm finding my hits is kind of special. It's almost like I have a rapport with the universe, and it's talking back to me when I ask it a question. And this is an experience I've had in other ways too, not just in remote viewing, but it seems to be happening now in remote viewing. And I'm not sure what to make of it.
Can I ask you another question? On this bit at the end there, you got where is it? Front load. You said you got under the category here of front loading.
Yeah, and so then underneath there would be the videos that I believe that front loaded me, and then after.
But did you see these videos before you did your target or after you?
That's what I'm saying. Those are the ones I watched before the target, and I didn't think I didn't think about them or watch them specifically to get a reading. I just happened. I mean, I watch a lot of videos, so those are 3 that I happened to watch, and then my reading kind of went to where they had been. Right. And to where they were going, because then the next couple of days, right after the reading, I did the reading on August 30th. And then right away after, I get the answer from them about what target I hit, which was the Vostok military exercises with the Chinese helicopter and seeing the shells at Zaporozhye that didn't hit anything. And so it's like the Ukrainians were kind of shelling Zaporozhye to make it look like someone else was shelling Zaporozhye and stuff like that. So, but what my question is why is my information so specific to these 2 people that I'm watching on YouTube? Is maybe because they are so world renowned, you know?
Well, maybe that's because that's where you're getting your feedback or for news, and some remote viewers just remote view them in the future or the feedback they're given at some point in the future. I mean,
well, the thing is, like, it doesn't have to come to me from them. Like, I could watch their video and then I could do a reading, and, you know, the hit comes from the major news, not from them. But what I'm finding is I seem to be getting specific information specific to them. And I'm wondering why, because I'm not asking for it specific to them.
How do you know it's specific to them? How do you know it's not reported in other news sources?
Well, that's what I mean. It was reported in other news sources after September 2nd and September 3rd. But I'm saying, like, in my case, on August 30th, I did the reading. I was front loaded by their videos. And then within 2 days, I got the hit back right from them. Like as if I had asked them and then they sent me back the answer. And I don't know if that's how remote viewing really works, if I'm getting over influenced by them. But I mean, the timestamp is good because I got the information before they published it, but it was only briefly before. So I'm just wondering what's going on.
As I said, you could just be going, looking at yourself at a point in the future and just
in 2 days. Yeah,
reporting your own feedback.
that could be
That
it.
is a common thing with beginner remote viewers, is that they do look at their feedback and then report that as in their RV session.
Because you see, I'll probably get over trying to look for my own feedback, but sometimes I get curious, and especially with this one, I kind of wanted to know. And same with the volcano. I thought, why am I seeing a volcano? So I kind of went looking for the feedback.
But if you're doing targets like this, where you're trying, I can't move this back a second, where you're trying to predict, and you're doing a big prediction thing here. You're trying to look 3 months ahead.
Yeah.
But you're only looking at catastrophic events, I'm guessing, by the look of this.
Well, I'm looking for major news, and I'm trying to give myself,
it doesn't say major news
descriptors.
Oh, it does. It says it there at the end. But it says major local news.
World and local. World and major,
your Q needs some work. You're putting too much in there. It's a bit broad and everything, but
too much. Okay. Yeah. Again, I was too much with the ideogram. Now I'm too much with the tasking. That totally makes sense.
But if you're also doing a 3-month target like this prediction, then you shouldn't be looking for any news hits until after 3 months has happened.
Right. Okay. And so the other thing is, that's why I did the 3 months, because when I was doing 1 month, I was getting 3 months. So I figure I might as well just do 3 months, since I'm getting 3 months ahead. And just anything that falls within those 3 months. That's what was happening before. I would go like, I'll do a reading for August, or I'll do a reading for April, but then I'm getting feedback in June, so I'm just seeing what happens, right? And this was interesting because
I'd be a bit more in control with that as well. Like if you're doing a project for a set month, only allow anything within that month to happen, and be strict with yourself and cut it off and say you can't go any further than that.
Yeah, because it's tiring the way I'm doing it. It's too tiring. It's exhausting. So narrow it down. That's a good idea.
Narrow everything down. Yeah, but if you're doing a 30-day window, don't look for try not to look for hits within that 30-day window. Forget about it. Then after the months happen, then go back and look for it. Because otherwise you're constantly feeding yourself information, and that we don't know how remote viewing works. You might just be feeding yourself and then accessing yourself at key points in the future. Just leave it alone. And at a 3-month window, that's a long time to have to wait for feedback and then to go back and find feedback as well for a 3-month window.
Like I just let, if the feedback is going to come, I let it. It usually does. So one way or another, I'll get feedback on my sessions, but I don't always go looking.
Or maybe specify the exact sources you want for feedback. So, I will look for news on maybe the BBC homepage over a month period or a 3-month period.
Yeah, because I don't always want to get reading, information from the Duran, because then it just looks like I'm following the Duran, So yeah.
Well, I hope that helps, but give it another try with some of those, trying to cut it down and being more specific and stuff like that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else got anything to add on that one for Deborah? Okay, so we'll move to some of the other questions then. Where are they? Let me find my list here a second. Now, Dimmy asked on Facebook, is she here? I think she isn't. Dimmy, do you want to ask your own question, or should I read it out for you?
Hi, sorry. Yes, just a second.
I can read it out if you're.
Yes, please.
Okay, Dimmy asked. She would like to know the perspective of remote viewers trained in multiple methods, and did they use what is better for them in getting results, or a mishmash of all the remote viewing methods they learned, or do they switch between methods during RV sessions? And at the end, does learning more methods help in getting good results, or maybe in a better understanding of how the subconscious works?
Thank you. Thank you, Dad. I don't know if it was made proper, this question.
Yeah, I'm finding it hard to hear you at the moment, Dimi. I think you're away from your mic.
I'm sorry. I forgot I have a mic. Sorry, I don't know if the question was right, but if you did understand it,
Yeah.
okay. So I imply that if anybody have HRVG, CRV, TDS, or whatever on their or under their belt, please do talk, because it's very interesting to know about all these. If it does help, how it helped, and so on. So if not,
I don't know how many people here have multiple method experience. I know David has some.
Yeah, I'll bite this one quickly. I think it's great having multiple methods, because when you do CRV or something, there's all these models we have like AOL, and then you do different people's version of CRV, and they do things a little differently and declare things differently. But if you only study in one of those schools, it's hard to differentiate what is essential and fundamental to the process and what is kind of arbitrary. And if you learn multiple methodologies, you can kind of triangulate on what's the essential stuff and what is a layer that's been placed over the top of it for convenience or ease of learning or utility. So when I'm remote viewing, I've learned CRV, TRV, TDS, and a couple of other little side things as well. I tend to use a TRV structure, but then I'll use tools I got from TDS. I stole Daz's stage 5. There's a bunch of stuff I just made up. It is a mishmash. Like, the structure's there for me to provide a backbone for the session, and then within that I'll do whatever I want these days. I'm definitely better equipped for having learned multiple methodologies.
thank you, David. Very interesting. Yeah.
Anyone else have anything to add on that one?
David, since you posted that TRV video of like the gingerbread man method, I don't even know what it's called. I started incorporating that into my CRV, and it works, and it's definitely a good addition. So that's my
Nice one,
input on
Kyle.
that.
Thanks, Kyle. Okay.
Des, I'd add something.
Go for it.
Yeah. I combine everything. I may format it. So for example, if I was going to send you a session, I would send it in a CRV basic session with the stages, the summary. But to be honest with you, I have probably 3 or 4 different methods I combined. I'm doing it, and I see what works the best at the time. I mean, there's times where, whatever reasons, I'm Angela Ford, Gonzo Freeform may work good for the session, but my end result is I format it to a CRV format. I will take the data, do all the stages in the CRV format, and then that's the way I've been doing it. But I combine everything. Like David said, I think it does help you. It's just like playing guitar. Sometimes one guitar works better, for whatever type of music you play, but you're still playing music. So if you use a different type of guitar, it may help a little better, but you're still getting the result of the music. So that's the way I look at it, is you're just combining, and I think we can all agree, we just want data, right? We don't want to think, we want to be, what you're talking about, your method is the flow. You want to get into a flow. You just want the data to happen, however it happens, write it down. And it's funny, sometimes when I use Angela Ford's method, which is including AOLs, it's like sort of like your stage 5, where you mind map it and you use words, whatever, and you break them down, different than the CRV or the coordinate remote viewing in stage 5, which I learned both. I like your method better. I do believe it does flow better in the real world today. You do get better results, I believe, and it's my opinion. But I think it's worth checking out other styles and see, maybe you can include it, or whatever your base style is. And I'm still learning. I'm still willing to listen to everybody and see what works, and trying to grow and get better. I'm certainly no expert in anything, but that's just my opinion. Thanks.
Bear with me, I'm still letting people in here. Does anyone else have anything
I just
to add
wanted
on
to
that one?
add, sorry, I was muted earlier by accident. I just wanted to say, Kyle, the gingerbread person is from TDS. It's in the TDS training videos on YouTube if anybody wants it. They're up on Daz's channel and elsewhere too.
Yeah, I went through most of those TDS training videos, but I didn't get to, that's like the sixth or the seventh one. And I think I only went up to like 4 and then found that it kind of got a little dry with all the interactive classroom setting stuff. So I never actually got to the gingerbread man until you posted that one up. So yeah, thanks for posting that. That and the consciousness map, mind map is pretty useful.
Does
Yeah,
that
they're
answer your
awesome
question,
tools.
Dimi?
Right?
Did they
Yes.
answer your question okay?
Yes, full full time. Yeah, thank you very much.
I would add to that though that I do think that you do need to spend time in each remote viewing method and maybe not start one, practice that for 3 months or something, then move to another one and you try to learn that as you're learning the first one. You know, I think each one you would probably need to spend separate amounts of time in learning to its fullest. Yeah, and then maybe taking parts from each one into your own. Because as you guys know, I've changed my CRV from what I was taught. You know, we were talking about the stage 5 stuff, and even in the stage 2, I do a different stage 2 than normal CRV because I have an added extra page to get more data, and included in that page, I even have a category that called subspace, which I stole off of Farsight and SRV. So even I've taken bits from other methods and incorporated them in my own as well. But I have to be honest, I didn't do that off the cuff. I did wait a few years before I did what's the word, bastardize the CRV methodology to my own use. And I say to everyone, including in the way I teach, that after a period of time, I would expect you as a remote viewer to start changing the method anyway, because we're all individuals and we all use it differently. And and we all know that all the methods we're learning all come from the origin of Ingo Swan and CRV. But Ingo was his own he was his own person. He was very creative, and CRV is a very hidden, creative, flowing process hidden behind the formality of it. But that might not work for everyone. That's why you need to find what works for you as a person. And if it means over a period of time taking bits and pieces from each method and then making it your own, then do that. I mean, that's what all the modern methods are anyway, really. But yeah, but please spend time in each one. Don't just like take a week's training in one.
What do you mean spend time in each one? Like
Well, it's like, for me, it's like learning, martial arts, which I've learned probably about 5 or 6. I wouldn't train and learn 2 martial arts at the same time. And I would only learn a second one after I got to, I would say, probably a purple level, which is about 2.5 to 3 years in of one. I couldn't imagine trying to learn one and then 6 months in from it moving to another one. Not until I've mastered the first one. For me, I got to the stage of being black belt in a couple, but I did that at a stage process. I spent 4 years in one, and then I moved to another one afterwards. Just be aware that if you're trying to mix too many at the same time, if you haven't established that muscle memory, then you may just create a little bit of a mess. But even a mess might work for you. We're all individuals. Bear with me a sec. I'll just admit this person here. And then Pat's got something. Do you want to ask or say what you want, Pat?
Just wanted to point out one RV method you can't really mix, but you can use it separately, is extended remote viewing, ERV, which I guess you could class lucid dreaming over the same thing. When you can't make a session record while you're doing the session, you have to do it afterwards. So that's one you can't mix. And generally I stick to CRE because it's quicker. I do get nice things with ERV. It's a great experience. It's a lot of fun. But in terms of just getting data to a task quickly, I can't do that quickly with ERV. And also, if I start a target off by doing ERV, going into the trans, etc., trying to, get in connection with the target, the session I do after that will be rubbish. Okay. If I try and mix it one way, I can get some data. If I try and start with it, my data is going to be pretty much non-existent. So just pointing out, there are some which don't mix very well, and you're better off doing them separately. Although some people are really good at them, so I wouldn't say, don't try them, but just be aware that it's not going to mix very well with stuff you've already got.
Excellent. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you for saying that. If I could say something real quick, Pat, what you just said is definitely what I'm experiencing. I started in ERV, and then somebody told me I should start doing paper sessions, and now I'm kind of really bad at everything, and I'm really new. ERV is good for me, but I find that I can't follow it with anything at all, because it's not like the other. Because I'm not writing anything at the time, I can't really intermix it with anything. But it seems to go nicely when I do that by itself. So, and thank you all of you for sharing this information. I've only been practicing now for about a year, and I'm all over the place. I'll have some sessions that are good and some that are horrible. Terrible.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Fabian. Bear with me a sec.
Fabian,
Okay.
about ERV, you can use a voice recorder. You can kind of train yourself to mumble really quick. I can't do it. I just wake up if I try and speak, but it can be done.
That is how I do it. I've been using a voice recorder that actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I've got my Zoom recorder here.
Oh, wow.
That I use for all my ERV stuff, and it actually works very well. I'm able to sort of speak, and I can certainly make out what I'm saying well enough to write it down later. So that's been nice. But for me, mixing that with CRV has been disastrous. It's almost like I'm starting over, and I never feel like I'm doing the same thing.
Have you tried doing the paper session first before the ERV? I think that's what people do more regularly.
I have not.
Because when I do ERV, I get visuals so good that I can name what's there and say, that's a person, that's a structure. It's exactly like this. That, I can put nouns on it and they're correct. So you're screwed going into a paper session then.
Yes. Yeah. So I should go the other way. When I'm doing CRV, I seem to start strong, and then I get weaker as I go. I start like with the colors, and just the stage 2 stuff all goes very nicely, and then it all falls apart for me. So I think so far ERV has been better for me, and because I've been doing both of these for under a year, I probably needed to devote more time to working on them individually. So back to what you were saying, Daz, that I jumped all around the place because people were telling me to try different things.
Yeah. That happens, yeah.
Do you use a ERV without a monitor, or just by yourself you use it?
I had a monitor. Yes, I've had 3 monitors now, 4 actually, and those have been pretty good. And they've done a good job of not front loading me or leading me on, especially because they don't know the targets. These have all been practice targets because I actually want real feedback on everything I'm doing right now. So it's been pretty good. CRV has been tougher for me.
Excellent. Anyone else got anything to add to this one before we move on? I think that's it for you on that then, Dimmy. So I hope that helps.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah, go
quickly?
for it.
Okay, because CRV was the first one I tried, and I find I'm still developing my CRV. Like, I haven't mastered it even close. I'm only really going to stage 3, and then I'm adding stage 4. And like I said, I just added a front loading. But to me, it's like a piece of art. Like, the method is art. And so I want to put it together. That's this, some of these advice that I've just gotten today, I feel I'm almost sculpting it more, but I'm sculpting it. So I could see pulling in things from other methods when I'm ready to learn them, because I haven't got CRV down. And I think that's good advice that Dad says, stay in one until you've got comfortable with it and you can move around in it. And then, you know, then move to another one. I would agree with that. So, yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for
Thank
that,
you,
guys.
everyone. Thank you, Des.
We had a question on Facebook as well from Paul Cosby. I think he's here, but I'll talk. I'll say it. I'll read it out anyway. He would like to discuss RV accuracy and honesty. He asks, can information received be deliberately dishonest or deliberately misleading? And is there a way to verify information, whether using something like a deep mind probe, getting into the subject's mind telepathically, or whatever? Along the same line, how can you protect against any telepathic overlay from a tasker to a viewer? Any of you guys want to answer that one? No, people being shy. Go on, Nita, go for it.
All right, so there seems to be a way to just focus on the actual targets. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but like if I'm the tasker, that's where you can explore this thing. If you are the tasker, you can notice at feedback time, when you see the feedback, especially when I have targets that are tasked only after the RV, like I will pull up a random target from a website or something. I don't even have a tasking before I start. So I do the RV first, and then I see my feedback. I've noticed how sensitive I am to, like, if I'm thinking, oh, I don't like that target, that's not what I wanted to do, or that's not what I thought I had. That will do what I started calling untasking. It makes RV think, oh, so that's not the target, because you just said it isn't the target. So RV is very sensitive. When I do my own tasking and the tasking is done after the RV, I've noticed how sensitive my RV is to how I feel about this target. Like I have to be careful to do a tasking first and to pretend that I'm only getting a feedback after tasking, see? Because I have to be professional and say, okay, this is my target, and pretend almost like I'm tasking it to somebody else. Because if I'm just using that time when I see the target the first time, if I use it as my feedback time, it has never been tasked. So I'm at a great risk of ruining it, untasking. Because, you know, when you get a feedback as a remote viewer, sometimes you're saying, oh, that's not what I thought. That's not what I wanted, or I thought it was something else. If you do that when you're supposed to be tasking it, you're ruining it because of that reason. Does this make sense, Daz, the distinction, what I'm saying? Because it hasn't been tasked yet. So I'm learning this thing where I realize that I'm the tasker and I'm the remote viewer wanting feedback at the same time, which is when I see my target for the first time. I'm supposed to be the tasker person at that moment after RV, but I'm also the remote viewer who wants to see my feedback. So there's this conflict of interest. So I've noticed I have to skip what I'm thinking as a tasker and find the real target.
I'm a little confused. When you get the target, it's not when you've tasked yourself, though, is it? You're getting the target off someone or someplace else.
No. Let me do this again. This is really interesting. I'm really sorry, but I love this stuff.
I just wonder why you call yourself the tasker if
Okay.
someone else has tasked the target.
Nobody has. So most of my targets that I'm doing lately, nobody has tasked them. The target is something that I'm the tasker, but they are tasked later. Like if I use a website which will generate a random page,
yeah,
I haven't generated it yet. First, I do the RV.
Yes.
Then when I finish, I click on random page. It gives me a target.
Okay.
It hasn't been tasked yet. Nobody has seen what the target is when I RV. So the thing
Yeah.
is,
Okay. I get it
this
now.
will lead to the answer to the question, at least how I see it. So when I finish the RV, report is closed, I'm going to pull up the target. I'm supposed to be a tasker at that point and say, this is the target number. This is the target. Go to this. I need to be a tasker person. But the problem is if I just want to be the remote viewer and be like, I want my feedback, I haven't tasked it yet. So if I'm thinking, I didn't like this, it's ruined for that reason. So the reason why this kind of answers the question is I had to learn to not go to the tasker, which is me in the future, because I'm going to ruin it. I've learned how to channel into the actual target, to not go to the person's mind, to go to the place. See, it's possible.
Can't you just make it simpler? Because in real world applications, you'll never beat the tasker. So just remove yourself as the tasker.
Yeah, but through this, I've learned how to not go to the telepathic overlay, how not to read my own ideas about the target. See, how to actually go to the physical target. There's this feeling of going under it. So you kind of dig a tunnel under the tasker person and you go to the actual physical target. Try tasking yourselves and see this thing. It's really tricky. And then you figure this out. How easy it is to ruin it with a telepathic overlay and conflict with your emotions about the target. I'm sorry if it's confusing. It's really confusing. Does anybody understand what I just said?
I had an experience like this. When I took Lori's RV course, she has that 1-day free course with Lori. I can't remember her. She works with Lynn Buchanan. You know who I'm talking about on Facebook?
Lori Williams.
Well, she has Williams, and she has this 1-day course. So she gave us a task for a photograph, and I did I RV'd, and I got image. And when she showed us the image, it was wrong. The one that I saw was not the right one. And I realized that I had gone to the wrong place. And I got that feeling that you get where you have to, like the image that I was tasked, it was sort of a little bit over there, like around this. I feel the same thing you're talking about. You have to go around the tasker thing. It's a block, kind of. Yeah. And I didn't know what it was or how to articulate it. Like, that's wild. But that's kind of, you have to avoid your own feedback. And that's what I did in that first session was I read my own feedback. It was wild. Hard to describe.
The whole concept of all this is a bit alien to me because I'm a bit more strict and down to earth. When I start my session, it starts. When it ends. I don't involve myself in looking at feedback, doing weird stuff or anything. It's just like, there's me, there's the target. That's the mechanism kind of thing, really. I have done targets like... sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the purpose of the question, there's a lot of ways to go askew with remote viewing. I mean, you can have AOLs, you can have displacement, there's a ton of different ways, but what I'm concerned about is actively being misled. Because, for example, there's a thing called grids. You can put a grid over a target, and then when somebody's spying on something, they see the grid and not the target. That's something that comes from Stargate. And
is there?
And Lynn Buchanan, well, he used to talk about back in Gulf War I, he would be tasked to.
But where's this documented to then?
Get into the head of Saddam Hussein every day. And, he got tired of it, but he was able to figure out where he was, what he was thinking. But how do you know if that's accurate? I mean, is there a way to get into somebody's head and actually perceive what they're thinking? Or if they say something to you, there's a way to test that to make sure it's honest? Because that was the issue. Is there a way to telepathically make sure something is totally accurate, or to get into a deep mind probe type thing? Because I can see you having a really great session, and somebody has fed all that to you, and none of it's real, none of it's true.
But Paul, you're going on information which has no basis in fact. There's no evidence. I've never seen any evidence in, and I must have read hundreds of thousands of remote viewing sessions and all the Stargate RV sessions. There's never anything documented about anyone being able to put a false net over a target to stop people getting information on it.
Well, Lynn says that he knows how to do that. When he came on Daz Chat ages ago, I asked him how, and he said, "Oh no, that's a secret. I can't tell you." He has the story stone that has a secret history, and nobody's able to remote view the history.
There's a lot of myths out there, but none of it's, as far as I can see, is based in factual, repeatable scientific experiments. And if you do look at what the SRI document says, it says clearly over year after year, they can find no mechanism to obstruct remote viewing in any way. And I've never seen anything that can obstruct it. So I'd be very careful that you might be creating that kind of ritualistic kind of falsity for yourself and putting that boundary on yourself.
But we could remote view. Has anyone remote viewed to find such a mechanism? If one could be created, like we need to remote view for the answers. That would be interesting, rather than just running various experiments, to actually RV it as a target. Design a way to block, or
you could try it, I guess, but I've never seen anything scientifically documented yet either way on it, on any kind of mechanism, especially not a non-physical, do you know what I mean, a psychically created mechanism to kind of obstruct. It may be possible. David, you had your hand up for a long time. Is it along this thread?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, you've had your hand up for quite a while.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Bro, I'll try and be quick here, Dad. Sorry, I'm late here. One question. I hate to be off topic here, but has anybody heard from Don? I haven't seen that guy in forever. I'm worried about that guy. Has anybody heard from him?
He had some surgery done, so he's been.
Well, thank God he's all right. Okay, good. But okay, a couple quick ones. As far as like target protection, just because that just had came up. It's funny. I have monitored people in some kind of interesting targets where they had the sense that they were being kind of like manipulated either by the tasker or the tasking, and they ended up putting some kind of target. I don't use it, but they ended up they put some kind of symbol as a target protection in the session. And what I thought was funny is from that point on in the session, the viewer literally like locked themselves out of the target. Like the viewer starts sketching themselves now at the desk, and like literally like a loop going around it. All again, this is all, speculative, who knows, but it was just interesting. It was almost like once they decided as a viewer to like put a protection on, it just like implemented itself in their mind, who knows, whatever. Second thing was, just out of curiosity, do you do stage 6, or what do you do for stage 6, Daz? I mean, what's your interpretation of that? Just out of curiosity, do you go to Clay? You don't go to Clay, do you?
I used to, but I found it to be just too cumbersome to keep wherever I was getting, because I was doing remote viewing sessions at work and on the bus, all that kind of stuff, and I just didn't have it to hand. So now I just do advanced sketches, or I do the air modeling thing. And the more modern way of doing it, to get a more kinesthetic approach of doing things, is doing the whiteboard RV. That's more like my modern kind of version of it.
You're interacting.
Yeah, you're standing up. Your whole body's moving.
You're getting a kinesthetic action going.
Yes, that would be my my modern version of stage 6, and that's why we like doing that in some of our sessions that we do, from the various projects, because it also it just, I don't know, the flow of information is just so much more rich when you're not sat down, when you're stood up and your feet are involved as well. Yeah,
You're getting like the internal motors going. Yeah, I get you. Yeah,
and I don't have
thank
to,
you.
and I don't have to get the clay and the little matchsticks out and all that kind of, because that was just too fit. That was just
it
too
makes
fiddly.
sense.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
also,
and my guess would be if you sketch and you're going to kick out, the things are just going to start getting, more advanced. But yeah, no, I totally makes sense.
Yeah, and because I use a tablet now as well. I don't know how many of you are using tablets. I know some of you are. I use a Galaxy Tab, which is an Android one, so it's got hundreds of apps for drawing and stuff on there. The drawing tools you get in the tablet now they're just amazing for me to do the sketches and adding color and dimension and all that kind of stuff. So airbrushes and watercolors, just at a flick of a kind of like.
Oh, one more thing, real quick, Daz, because you guys do add color. How when you guys started adding color, because I mean, I'm where my training's back from, we don't do that, but how was it initially? Was it kind of like colors kind of didn't seem to be matching up right, and then all of a sudden it just kind of started kind of going with your flow, or was it automatic like, okay, this is green, this is white, this is you know what I'm saying?
It's hard for me to say because I've only just over the last few years started adding color. Before that, I would never do anything other than add shades of gray. It's only when I got the new tablet that I decided one day to just start adding color. But it's a rare event for me to add color. It's probably 1 in 30-40 RV sessions that'll add a bit of color to it. Most of them I just stick to shades of gray to in my sketches to differentiate, like a 3D-ness about certain parts of it and stuff.
You're in a wide shot, this is a hilly green area, this is a rocky gray, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So for me, I just stick to 3 or 4 shades of gray. On the odd occasion, though, as I said, 1 in 30-40 sessions, and most probably when they're more esoteric, when I'm looking at weird things like, I don't know, non-human entities with weird auras and stuff like that, then I will use color. But I have to be honest, it's rare. Probably about only 5 or 6 times in my 26 years that I've used color.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No worries. But on Paul, on your deep mind probe stuff as well, I don't know about putting the maps over targets. I haven't never seen any evidence that it may be possible. But trying to verify information from getting in the mind of people, you can get into the mind of people at targets. That's not a problem. Most of us do that all the time, whether that's ethical or not. That's another debate we can have in a minute. But the problem with that information as well is that kind of information is usually very hard to feed back from targets. What is a primary person at that target thinking at that point in time? That when you get your feedback package, that's usually not included in the feedback package, so it's very hard to verify that as a valid source of information. And you also asked, can you protect against telepathic overlay from a tasker to viewer? I've wrote several articles on this. I don't believe that we have to date any proper mechanism to stop that. And my worrying underlying fault with remote viewing is that a percentage of all remote viewing is just telepathic communication. And maybe on some projects with some remote viewers in some organizations, quite a lot of the information might be telepathic. I'm not naming anyone here. But yeah, there are some people that are. I think there's quite a lot of telepathic or other signal kind of stuff going on, which isn't remote viewing. I don't think we've stopped the problem yet. It's one of those things I think needs an extra 20 million of research to try to find further on that. I don't know who put their hand up first. I think Pat, you're at the top of the list. So if you want to go with yours first.
Okay. Deep probes sort of made my ears prick up because of the way I came into remote viewing, which was to set a target up from photo shoots. And I was the only person present in the photo shoot, and something very strange happened with my head, as in some contact was going on inside it. So I set as a target, and one of the viewers actually did a mind probe on a life form they encountered. So what that taught me was that if you are going to do that sort of thing at a target, be very gentle, be very subtle. Don't try and be forceful, because they can notice that it's going on. I'm saying that genuinely and sincerely. I should really put the whole thing out into the public domain for people to read. If you want to know a name, because you'll recognize it, the viewer was Marv Darley. And I'm sure you've heard of him. You still remember him. So that's all I will say is, if you're doing it as a remote viewing technique, be very gentle, because you don't know what you're probing. And if there's one thing that Ingo is very big on, it's that some things out there can be offensive and have abilities we don't really understand or have an idea of. So caution is what I'd advise really for doing that sort of thing. In terms of taskers, if a viewer doesn't want to give me information because they think it's not for me as a tasker, that's totally up to them. You know, you can always withhold from a tasker, and the tasker just has to lump it. They have to put up with that. And vice versa. If I'm a viewer and I think the tasker shouldn't really know this, it's for me, I'll keep it private. And that's always a right a viewer has to say, I don't think I should keep this as part of my session for whatever reason. You know, it's their choice. That's all I've got to say on that subject, okay?
Thanks for that, Pat. And Anita, you got your hand up. Do you want to go next with this one?
There's something related to, we've been discussing how can you avoid telepathic overlay with a tasker. So a related question, is it possible to block a target site from being accessed by a remote viewer? Can you conceal people, or can you protect a person's thoughts from being looked into by a remote viewer? Can you shield areas from access? I would just mention to that question, ever since I started using visual probes, almost every session where I have, I think CRVers call it advanced visuals, I don't know, and partial bilocations, I get a visitation from an alien being, usually the mantids, the big praying mantises. Also the figure called the Hat Man, which is a white alien figure who likes to wear a black hat and a black coat. And they will specifically tell me that they perceive me as a threat. They don't want their bases to be remote viewed. Now, the thing that's interesting is they are very psychically perceptive. And I think a lot of remote viewers have encountered psychic aliens that are aware of them when they are remote viewed. Instead of them, aliens, having any kind of psychic or other technology to block me because they perceive me as a threat, they do not want me to remote view them, even though they are not the target. They are not introducing any kind of physical, psychic, or otherwise method of blocking me out. So it's obvious that they don't have any way of stopping a remote viewer. So if they don't have one, I don't think we humans could figure one out, because they are far more advanced than us. So maybe there isn't a way to, is there a way to protect an entity or a base from being accessed by a remote viewer? Because the aliens do not seem to have one, since they resort to threats and pleading instead. Just some thoughts there.
I can add a little bit to blocking and weird things, because I've done a few targets where there's been, well, attempts at blocking, but I'm not sure there is a way to really block remote viewers. What I've experienced is more like misdirection. There's, when you remote view certain very senior political figures, we say, not all of them, but some of them, you bump into stuff. I mean, there's one person whose name you'll all know who might or might not be in the midst of an illegal invasion at the moment. If you try remote viewing him, there's interesting effects. I'm fine. But it's not, you can't really block it out, it seems. It's more like you'll get random noise or you'll get emotional content. There's a very famous military site in the US that loads of viewers have reported headaches and weird experiences remote viewing. I know Daz believes it's all made up and it's just because they were expecting it, even though they were blind or something. But when I did that, I got all of this really demoralizing stuff, like images of this guy in a hospital bed and he's so depressed and going, why don't you just give up? This is so pointless. And, you know, so, but if you recognize it for what it is, you can prompt yourself, what would I see if I wasn't seeing all this bullshit? And you can just go straight behind it. But for me, it's been like, it will just appear. It's kind of inserted in there. And if you recognize it, I guess times when I've gone beyond it was when I've been monitored and the monitor's gone, oh, wait, I know what's happening here. This is protection or defense or something, bypass it. And all it takes is a prompt. Just go behind it. I did somebody who I'm definitely not going to name here because I don't want to get Pat priced, but his name rhymes with Bob. And I got this weird, like a big statue, a big scary, like a stone knight that if it was in a movie would definitely come to life and attack me in this like weird castle kind of place. I'm describing this thing and it's confusing. You know, sometimes you get data and it feels unreal because the detail's missing. And I couldn't orient myself in this. I couldn't find where's the target. I was just kind of stuck in this image. Eventually the monitor, kind of the penny dropped and he said, oh, wait, I think I know what's going on here. Are you being messed with? So all I did was prompt myself, if this wasn't happening, what would I perceive? And we went straight to the target. So stuff can be inserted. And if you recognize it's happening or your monitor does, you can just go straight around it. So I don't think anything can be really blocked, but you can be deceived as a viewer.
Very interesting. You know, years ago, I believed that I was being viewed without knowing, like I didn't know anything about remote viewing, but I believe that I had some people who were probing me. And I can't really describe it. It's a social situation. And so I was being given verbal cues by stalkers who were letting me know that they had done this. And I thought, how can I protect myself? Because I'm very open-minded and I don't rule out things that might be impossible, like the fact that somehow these people are reading my mind. So, I mean, it's a weird place to come from when you're the target of this and they're letting you know. So I began to search for ways to block this. And of course, with my Christian background, I went to the Bible. And it was very interesting what I found because it looks like Paul. The Apostle Paul might have been encountering some kind of spiritual attacks. And there's a passage now, of course, I can't remember where it is, but he says, and now my life lies hidden with God in Christ. And I did that. I put my life and I hid it in Christ. And believe me, I experienced quite a lot of relief from the anxiety that I was having. Again, it's like a prompt, you know, just a personal prompt. But I found one that worked for me. I'm not sure if it blocked them out completely, but I'm developing some of these methods myself. And yeah, it's a kind of cyclical strength that you begin to build. And I think it's something that you begin to build and you keep building it and you're going to come across certain things that can't break it. And then you'll meet your Waterloo and find another one that's getting through. And so you learn how to block that. You need to guard your mind. It talks in the Bible about this too. Guard your mind. Every thought that comes in, you need to make sure you know where that's coming from. And I started this years ago in my meditation to clean my mind and make sure that I was in possession of who I am and what my thoughts are, as opposed to some other thoughts and where they're coming from. And I began to start to learn to differentiate. And this is where I began to exercise the discernment. This is such a gift but it's a process, and you build it around yourself with your familiarity and discernment in what I would call the spirit world, or the density matrix, or this realm where you're encountering whatever entities you may be encountering. So I think it's a thing you can build, and I think it's very specific to you and your own mind and how you organize it. And we can talk more about this, but it's something I've been working on for a long time.
Thanks, Deborah.
This
Just
is
to
a
add,
common thing, and it's actually kind of similar to what you were experiencing, I think, Anita, with the Hat Man and the aliens and stuff showing up. That when you train in remote viewing, you broaden your awareness out, and you broaden it out into realms where you're perceiving stuff that is not target data, that's just floating around. These things are sometimes called like lower astral entities, which is rather a prescriptive term, but these things are everywhere. If the reason we tell our children not to use a Ouija board is because those are the things that will turn up, right? You can, when you first open the doors on this stuff, it can all come flooding in. Like Deborah, I've had that experience of feeling other people's emotions, and I didn't believe that was a thing that was possible to do. So I was really confused why I was having all these weird, messed up thoughts that were they didn't seem like me, but I didn't believe that they could be anything but me. So it was really unpleasant. And then eventually, after much Googling, I'd kind of got desperate enough that I was willing to entertain the possibility that this actually wasn't my stuff. If anybody's having experiences like this, setting psychic boundaries is the term you need to put into Google, and then scroll down until you find a ritual that isn't so dumb that you're unwilling to do it. This doesn't need to be complicated, but yeah, you need to kind of establish a perimeter with your intent.
yeah, thanks for that, David. David mentioned earlier that I don't believe in all this. This happens within remote viewing. I guess I need to clarify that a little bit. I don't allow that to happen within remote viewing. For me, remote viewing is very straight-laced. I sit down, I do my RV. There are no weird presences. I don't allow any weird presences. There's just me, there's the target, and there's the information. So for me, I set the construct for myself that none of that exists. There are no limitations. People can't obscure targets from me. I can go wherever I want, all this kind of stuff. So that's my RV belief system. And that works for me. What I found over the years of doing all this, and it's 26 years remote viewing, but all my life in psychic work, is that outside of remote viewing, it's complete reverse of what I've just been telling you. Because I use different methodologies, everything comes in: non-human, aliens, weird life forms, spirit beings, all kinds of weird shit. But that's because I allowed myself in my upbringing of that construct and that mechanism I was taught for that kind of stuff to be allowable and to be there. So I think what you'll find is what you personally set as your mental constructs for how you do remote viewing and everything you practice will be the way it is, because that's the mental construct that you're building for yourself. I think the whole psychic realm out there and everything else that's happening it's universally malleable. It has many different forms, and each one of us is individually creating our own way that this is working for us, and your own limitations within that as well. So be very careful on what you think and what you read and what you hear from other people telling you what you can and can't do, because you may just be a bit like Ingo's reality boxes. You may be creating your own box to store yourself in. We had some other topics. We had one on some of us been talking about.
Just a second, Des. Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Didn't you have you with Dick sometimes like 5 to 10 years or 7 years ago? Courtney set up a target for you, and you and Dick didn't have any relevant data for the target, and then he tried another my method, let's say, and after that both of you came up with data after.
Yeah, I think that was the Area 51 target.
Yes.
Me and Dick both did the target. None of us got any relevant data whatsoever towards anything that could be constructed as Area 51. Then Courtney claimed, I can't remember exactly what he claimed. David might know better because he remembers. I ignore it. He claimed he had some kind of conversation with some kind of alien being.
I remember what I believe he said was that he retasked you all, and he said something like the viewer will perceive Area 51 via the consciousness of his alleged grey alien friends. And my feeling is that this thing that he's been talking with for some time is the sort of thing that you don't want your kids talking to with a Ouija board.
Yeah, so Courtney claimed that was why we were then allowed access as a target. I can't comment on that other than there's no proof for it. I don't believe it. So it doesn't exist. Me and Dick didn't get the target. We just didn't get the target for one reason or another. There's no proof either way on why that was. Again, it's all about mental constructs that we're all creating for ourselves. Just be very, very, very careful, and again, be very careful who you work for as well. Yeah, I've gone through that one. David, you've had your hand up again for a while.
Yeah, I just want to say, and again, just because I think it's interesting, it's weird, but again, I'm not claiming anything. I mean, it's likely just like imagination or whatever the construct is. But I have had multiple occasions where it seems to be, and what's strange is it's always a place with old artifacts, like a place that holds old artifacts for some reason. It's happened to me at a church in London with an old church with all these old knights, the Knights Templar, where I was in the session just sketching stuff, and I had kind of a sense where like a guy just kind of tapped me on the shoulder, "Can I help you?" type of thing. but he was like in a night costume, and I document all this stuff, obviously, and obviously it relates to the target. Is that a ghost? I don't know. I'm not gonna say that, but I also have had where I had a Native American museum where they had Native American artifacts, very similar thing, where like a Native American chief, basically, like I went into his living room, I started putting stuff in my pockets. It's like, "Hey, can I help you?" And then it's like they just kind of like know that I'm just looking around and then just leave. I mean, so I document it. It seems to relate towards the material of the target because that's how it happens. Do I believe it? I don't know. It's not really in my belief system. And I talked to Paul about this, and his thoughts were that perhaps maybe there's some permeability in some kind of aperture. I mean, who knows? You know what I mean? But it's just something interesting that I thought I'd mention that's happened.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's a strange world. By the way, the London thing. I was in London last weekend. And I walked. There's this place just off Fleet Street in London, and I was there looking around, and it's called Temple Church, and it essentially is a really ancient Templar location there, and it has that kind of feeling just from walking around it.
I think that's what the actual target is. I think that's the one. So yeah, it was interesting.
It's an amazing place. Yeah, fantastic. Pat, you were next.
Yeah. Are you ready to go on to a new topic yet, or
I guess we can do if Jim or Anita. Do you want to talk on this topic?
Yeah, just to add on what David just said. Okay, so David, I have that too lately when I do some people targets, where if I start to bilocate, when I see the person, they see me, and almost always they get very aggressive, and they'll say, "How did you get into my house? Who are you? What are you doing here?" I get physically attacked by them. I can feel the punches. I feel as if I have a body that's there. I'm suspecting I might be using some astral projection mixed into my RV. I will fall over. I'm trying to hide behind the couches, not being seen. Some of the people targets, think, because I'm trying to draw their faces, so I'm right up at their face, staring into the little corners of their face. A lot of them, if it's a man target, they will assume I'm flirting with them. So I've been sexually assaulted, kissed. I had Elvis Presley, he kissed me. He thought I was flirting with him. So yeah, David, I have this as well. David, do you experience on those targets where the target people are seeing you and talking to you and asking, what are you doing here? Can I help you? Are you having partial bilocations when that happens? Do you feel as if a copy of your body is at the target site and then they see you? Because that's how it happens to me.
I think, look, here's what I think is either happening. Either it's just my imagination, which would be the responsible thing to say, or once you reach a threshold, maybe if there is something that's, that's there on another realm or something, or like a ghostly, protecting stuff. I don't know. I don't think that live people, I seriously doubt that that's ever happened to me. My thoughts are they're either dead or it's just something that got wrapped into an AOL or something in my session. But I mean, to be honest with you, deep down in my heart, I believe it's probably just some dead person. It's just, hey, what are you doing here? But I can't say that. I really don't know. The odds of it being a live person is even farther unlikely. But my guess would be, but see, this is where belief system does come into play, because I believe that, there may be, when you're, who knows? I mean, you could be crossing there could be some very close borders there. I mean, this is all stuff that we're talking about in a theoretical term. And we really don't know what the hell is going on, but it's interesting. I mean, I've never had anything physical or anything really super deep, but there has been times where just people out of character just basically just tap me on the shoulder, like, hey, what are you doing here? And then if they instantly read my mind and know I'm not there to mess with anything, and then they disappear. It's just like that.
David, would you be up for, we should have a group of remote viewers and do this kind of RV on each other? And if you experience that I'm seeing and talking to you, then we could experiment on this and figure out if it's a simulation or not.
Be interested in sending a remote viewer to a location, and at that location have one of those 3D ghost cameras set up and see if it picks up.
No. No, but we should RV each other, and you and me at least, when we have this experience of seeing each other and touching and talking, and then later we can ask each other, well, did this actually happen? It can be experimented on to figure out if it's real or not.
It'd be hard to do that blind though, wouldn't it?
No, I mean, we know we're in each other's target pool, but we don't know when it's going to be done. So if
what do you think with the 3D camera though, Daz? You know what I'm talking about, right? Where it has like it shows like a ghostly figure, like dot imaging. I'd be curious to throw that in any target area and just see if it picks up. It would be
interesting. Yeah. I don't know if it would pick anything up. I know SRI tried all that kind of stuff, but hey, we have more and better technology now than they had 40 years ago. So it may be possible, or even one of cameras like that, maybe infrared or a flare. Flare would be better, I think, if you could get it. And maybe also a random number generator in the vicinity as well, to see if that was affected by a remote viewer allegedly being there. But I don't know. When we talked about this in the past, I have no. It's not in my belief system that a remote viewer ever goes to a target. I don't believe that happens. Right. So,
yeah,
it's not in my beliefs. But I'd be willing to put that to the test.
Yeah, I mean, I figure if something happened, something could be learned. Maybe But yeah, like you said, the technology is a lot better than what it once was. So yeah. See some of that just from data perspective to see if there's any correlation there.
Yeah, it would be interesting if we could get the equipment. It'd be worth a worthy test. I don't know about Anita's one though. You'll have to speak to Anita separately about you remote viewing each other. That sounds a bit personal.
Right now, you guys are talking about my favorite kind of stuff. Anita and I have had an experience very much like what she's talking about, where I was doing a meditation randomly one night, and it seemed as though she appeared in my living room, and it freaked me out. And I remember thinking, well, if you're really here and not just a figment of my imagination, then I would like you to message me tomorrow, because we don't really talk outside of this. This was Anita, was this just over a year ago, maybe?
I don't remember when it was.
Yeah, it
I
was.
think so. Yeah, I think it was winter because it was. Doesn't matter when it was though.
Yeah, it was a while ago, but basically, I do my meditation every night, and this one particular night was completely random, and I had this strong sense that she was right in front of me. So I said, okay, well, this could be my imagination, or you could prove me otherwise. Why don't you, right now, why don't you? I'm going to stop my meditation. You stop what you're doing and send me a message. And she very, in my mind, she said, I can't do that because I'm sleeping. And I thought, oh, okay, well then how about you message me tomorrow? And at that point, we hadn't spoken since I tasked a target maybe a month beforehand. So we weren't used to speaking to each other privately. So I said, okay, send me a private message tomorrow. And the next day, she sent me a message. So that got me thinking a lot of really strange things about how we remote view. So apparently, uh, we also determined what time it would have been. It would have been 4 a.m. her time, 10 p.m. my time. So that was strange and got me interested in doing experiments on can we visit each other. But then, Daz, like what you were saying, I think there are some situations where well, most situations we don't travel somewhere that the information just happens to be available everywhere. I personally believe that information exists on perhaps a subatomic field level where it is actually everywhere all at once. So information is accessible from everywhere. I believe that is the case. I believe in what scientists are now studying, or physicists are now studying, in terms of, I can't think of the term right now suddenly, but in terms of entanglement, those kinds of things. That's very much how I think remote viewing works. And then because I have a history in astral projection, I think that's an alternative way it might work, where CRV might rely perhaps on entanglement, quantum entanglement, just maybe ERV operates on remote viewing. I'm sorry, on astral projection. Ultimately, I don't know that there is any necessity to travel anywhere. That it is all about superposition, and that the data is just there when you're looking for it. So that's just an interest of mine and my personal opinions that I change if I have reason to think something otherwise.
Thanks, guys. We've left Pat going for a while here, so Pat, do you want to? Because you wanted to change tact a little bit, didn't you? We left you with your hand up, so go ahead and go for that.
Well, it's kind of ironic because I'm aware of whole communities that practice online telepathically and psychically for years. So yeah, that's the thing some people do. If you want to find them, you can find them on Facebook. They're called the Guild, the PSION Guild, Scion Guild. And they do all sorts of stuff like that. What they call remote viewing, they call scanning, but same deal, pretty much. So yeah, just to finish off the last subject, that's the thing, it happens. I had some goss for you, Daz, because I know you like alien stuff and remote viewing stuff, and it's kind of connected. Lynn Buchanan went in a chat recently online on YouTube about his Men in Black experiences, specifically with regards to piloting her grey ship. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or whatever, however we want to express it as a UAP or Now, I did some checking, and apparently that would be around the time when Bob Lazar, bless him, was laid off from Area 51, S4, but before he was sacked. And I recall him saying that around that time there was a breakthrough in propulsion. So it does make me wonder if the breakthrough in propulsion was actually Lynn Buchanan explaining how the controls work, which would be an interesting coincidence. So that's possible.
Yeah, yeah. Be interesting to see more on that.
Yeah, another RB piece of gossip. Paul Smith, again, bless him, has said he's got the original session he did for TWA 800 still, and there's no non-disclosure on it. You can quite happily let whoever wants it get it. So my TW 800 project is on hold until he's either dug them out or said he hasn't got them or whatever, because he doesn't want to comment on anything unless he knows what he said. Yeah, there's a bit of a hold on that, but it's for a good reason, I hope. I hope you'll all like it when it's finished, because it's meant to be a sort of like a fair look at the whole thing and just saying everybody tried. None of them quite got there, but I mean that's not their fault, because at the time technical details on jumbo jets were not very common, and indeed the internet was very, very, very infantile compared to where it is now. So there you go. That's my bits of news. Carry on, whoever.
But on the TWA thing, there were 3 different viewer scenarios. One of them has to be correct, though, doesn't it?
I think James got closest, but if you see what he actually said at the time, what could have happened, it couldn't have. But yeah, it's because it's such a I think it's such a complicated incident with what really happened. Any viewer is going to have an issue, particularly with the idea of energy and motion. You know the way CRV is start off, energy and motion, yeah? Energy and motion. Well, my hypothesis is based on the idea of stopping something and getting energy out of it, which is kind of contrary to the way viewers go. You know, it's sort of like if something's in motion, if something's not in motion, it's kind of hard to tell from sketches and descriptions what's going on. So yeah, I've learned a lot from doing all this, and I hope more will come out of it, because I certainly don't have all the answers on it. But it's a very intriguing project, and thank you for setting me up for it. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, look forward to seeing more on that. Jim, you've had your hand up for an awful long time as well. If you'd like to go next, and thanks for waiting as well. Sorry about that.
No normal questions. That's the rule, right? I've been doing some weird stuff, like talking to other groups of psychics who are not remote viewers and looking at some of their methodology. And I guess my question for us is, I'll try to shorten the question if I can, but talking to mediums and looking at some of their modalities, other folks who have different modalities other than remote viewing. As I got interested in this, I started to do some extended remote viewing and got into that more. I've never really practiced that much. And it was surprising to me, because the times that I've done it, I have a blind target pool. One of my targets is show me the events of my next day. And 3 times in a row now, it's given me a lot more data about events in my next day. Like funny things, you don't know quite what's numinous, what's going to show up in the day. But as I'm doing this and I started to get into extended remote viewing, I started to realize that some of the topics that I'm asking, like I'm so far down, I don't know what I'm talking about. And then I wake up sort of, and then I listen to my recorder to see what I've said. But I've noticed in some of these recordings, what I'm saying is like third person. It's not articulated as me. It's like something else is articulated. And it made me wonder, really when we talk about mediumship or these other kinds of modalities, are we really just drawing boxes around things that we shouldn't be? Is it all kind of the same stuff underneath? Just curious if you all have thoughts from your experience, those who've done things more. Is that kind of an artificial delineation? Because I know a lot of the mediums will go, well, there's a lot of different psychics, but a medium is something different.
I don't think anyone knows the real answer on this now. All I can give you is my viewpoint. And before I got into remote viewing, I tried everything. I spent several years training to be a clairvoyant, medium, healer, scryer, tarot. I did sand readings, tea leaf readings. I mean, everything that was out there, I tried it. And it all works, and it all works to different levels for different people. And at the time, bearing in mind, before I even tried it myself, I spent many years, because I grew up in the spiritualist church. So every Sunday for me, it was in front of, the front of the pew with some medium up there allegedly talking to dead people. And I believed it all. And I believed it all when I was doing it as well. But then when I did remote viewing, and I found that I don't have, I can go to a Target and get information and have conversations with dead people, but just through pure information that's left behind in the matrix, rather than actually thinking that I'm talking to a dead person. It made me question, are these people just making a mental construct from themselves that they're talking to a dead person, but all they're doing is they're doing the same as us, as remote viewers and everyone else, just accessing the pure information data stream that exists. So I'm conflicted, and I don't know either way. Although I did read Jeffrey Mishlev's book that he won the $500,000 for the Bigelow Foundation on afterlife research, and that had some compelling information in it. I'm still not totally convinced though on all that, but I do agree with you. I think that everyone that's practicing a different methodology, clairvoyance or mediumship, anything like that, they're just, it's like what we were talking about earlier. You're just creating your own individualized little reality box to kind of, that's how it works for you, and that's your safe zone at that time. I think it's, as I said, I think it's all much larger than that, much more malleable. And every single one of us here tonight is we created our own individual way of remote viewing and accessing psychic information. And it's
That's really
different for all of us. Yeah. But that's just my viewpoint. Other people might have different ones. That's how I've seen it there. Anyone else got anything to add to that one? No?
I kind of do. I kind of have a couple of things about what we've been talking about, like with Anita and Elvis. It's really interesting because I saw your facial RV of Elvis on Facebook, and then I noticed I get these feelings of presences, and there are other cues too that are given when I feel there's a spirit visiting. They come by and they say hi, or they have specific information. And one day I seriously felt Elvis, and I'm thinking, oh, hi, Elvis. And it was only a few days before Anita's RV came up on Facebook. So the timing of the experience of Elvis between the two of us was a bit of a synchronicity, which I thought was cool. And he never gave me a kiss, so I'm jealous. And then I was doing this reading when they launched the Hubble. And I'd been waiting for the launch of the Hubble, for a couple of years. Like I am a geek this way, so I've been really like the Hubble. And so I'm doing a reading and I get the Hubble. But this reading was, RV session was, CRV was off. It was like so wild because it was like the Hubble was going through some other dimension, because I'm seeing like the ocean and a sailboat and a beautiful starry evening. And there's an alien flying around in a spaceship, having a great time, this little gray. And then on the ship, there's a couple, and there's this gorgeous couple, woman and a man. And I'm getting a real visual of this woman's face. She's just beautiful black woman with this gorgeous hair, like dreadlock braided kind of. And I was thinking, wow, that hair is so great. And then I had this AOL thought about remembering how, my mother would never let me touch her hair. And this woman says to me, I would let you touch my hair. And I just about jumped off my chair. I'm like, she's talking to me. Like I couldn't believe it. And that I put that in the session, but that's really the first time that ever happened to me, where she was a human subject, I believe, although there was a gray alien. So maybe she wasn't human. I didn't probe it that much because I was so surprised that she even spoke to me. It just blew me right out of the reading pretty much, that was the end of it. Because, but I don't know. That happened, and I don't know how to explain it. And I feel it was a weird reading because, like I say, the Hubble was in it, but then I was in the tropics on a sailboat. So I'm still learning how to discern what the meaning of this is. But a subject did talk back to me, and she spoke to me about a personal thing about my mother, and I just don't know what to make of it, but it's quite fascinating.
I get a little jealous because if I listen to the mediums for some operational work, we have to build aperture. We do all this work to get to the good data. It takes me a while. And they some of them talk about, well, no, the spirit just showed up and told me this. And so I'm like, well, if we can do that, whether it's an imaginal framework or something, like how does it work if your data is accurate and you got it like quickly and it didn't take you an hour-long session? So I'm a little jealous of that if the accuracy rate is similar to what we achieve.
Well, you know what I think it is too, is I never was aware, like I wasn't allowed to be aware of the information I was getting when I was younger, that I was getting a lot of information. I just wasn't allowed to pay attention to it because in our world, we don't pay attention to this stuff. So you're probably getting all kinds of information, you're just ignoring it, would be my, I mean, I get so much information, I can't process it all. It just, but I'm autistic, so that's sort of normal for me. But the information is overwhelming sometimes. And I think maybe meditation, again, always back to the meditation, is where you begin to clean your mind and move away all the furniture in there, and so that you have a clear area where you can see this other information. You need to clear it all out. Meditation, that's where it's at.
Jim, also, you can also, if you have just like simple questions and stuff, you can find ways to use an RV to do it super fast. For example, I'm still in the midst of an RV experiment using CRV ideograms for binary questions. So, yes or no, up or down, that kind of thing. And instead of getting the remote viewers doing a big session, they literally just do me one ideogram. And that one ideogram either decides if it's up or down or yes or no. And it takes the remote viewer literally, 30 seconds to do their remote viewing session. And for me as an analyst, it takes me 30 seconds only to take the two, because an ideogram, the CRV process, has only got 4 or 5 pieces of information attached to it. So it's very easy for me to then match that against an A target or a B target. So you can, make RV smaller and more precise and more specific depending on your needs.
Yeah, that's a really useful tip. That's impressive.
It obviously can't answer complex questions for you, but if you can structure it around yes or no kind of answers or binary answers, you could use CRV or any methodology to answer that in 30 seconds for you.
I've met people who are doing missing people or murder cases, and they claim that spirits show up and tell them things. And sometimes, but the funny thing is, they claim like sometimes the spirits give the wrong answers, or so I'm a little. It's interesting, you keep an open mind to these things.
Yeah.
But if
the problem when you open yourself up more to the larger universe of things rather than keeping it strictly RV based, I feel you do open yourself up more to the trickster element of things to happen. I had those conversations for so many years with non-human life forms. And I would say probably a huge percentage of the conversations and the things I was told would be false. It's almost like, they get a great pleasure out of to lying and deceiving us. So
they'll tell you whatever you want to hear, though, won't they? They tell fantastic stories. Like anybody who's experimenting with this stuff and something is telling you a really compelling story, like a real page turner, that's a massive red flag. Right. If that happens and you find yourself getting really drawn into it, you need to take a step back.
What kind of percentages are you getting, Daz, on your ideogram project? Are you getting like better than standard, like straight ARV?
Way higher. I've done 31 experiments of using ideograms for ARV, and I'm running at 84% accuracy.
That's wild. Yeah. That's really. I mean, that's just such a stretch from what I've seen in standard ARV numbers. You know what I mean? So that's progress.
And as I said, it literally is 30 seconds for them to do it and 30 seconds for me to analyze it, because it's a single ideogram with the, with the A and the B. And so you get the hard and you get them naming it with the B part as well. Sometimes I go on what they say with that. Sometimes I go on how I feel it looks visually. But yeah, I'm running at 84% accuracy over 31 experiments, and that's predicting cryptos 4 or 5 days in advance on if they're going to go up or down.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's interesting too, is because there's so many directionality, in just standard sketching and stuff. But obviously, when you're through the tasking, just the ideogram alone, it's
like, I'm mixing up the pairs. So one pair will be, I will just look at the direction of the ideogram. So if their ideogram, when the way they draw it looks like it's going upwards, that would be A, and if it looks like it's going downwards, that would be B. And then the next time I'll switch it around, and I'll have ideograms for structure and water, and it'd be, I will be looking for them to actually identify a structure or a water kind of thing, and the closest one to match it. So I'm trying to keep them guessing and them not bored, and I'm trying to work out which approach is best at the same time. But yeah, 31, I'm at 84% accuracy, and Deborah Lynn Katz has been judging as well blindly, not knowing hardly anything about the project at all. She's running at less accuracy, but she's still at something like 71% accuracy. So, and that's still well above what most people are getting with long-term ARV work.
For sure. Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so other topics here. We're running a bit out of time here. We did have other ones here. Dimi asked if we could talk about the loose thread document. I don't know if anyone, you guys have seen that, and I don't know if we can talk about it here because everyone would have to read it really. But if you haven't heard about it, there's this document that came out probably about 5 days ago now, called Loose Threads, and it's available on Twitter and on my Facebook site and those other places. I recommend you have a good read of that, even if you're not into UFOs and UAP research. It's still worth reading if you're into UFO research, because the investigators have done a really good job of investigating all the current things that are happening out in our world and tracking how the top people within RV and RV research have at the same time been very interested in UFO research. And they go into quite in depth into all the latest research and technology. It's essentially pointing, even UFO researchers are pointing them now into the fact that consciousness is the linking factor between UFOs and UAPs and remote viewing. So everyone now is looking at taking consciousness research a little bit more seriously. And so, yeah, so if you haven't read it, try to find a source for it. It's around about 245 pages, if I remember correctly. So it's definitely worth a read. But as a lot of you probably haven't read it, it's probably not worth us really talking about it too much, other than I personally and a few other people, we've discussed it privately. We think it's got huge implications for the history of remote viewing, and how the history of remote viewing might have been used for UAP research, and how it might still be being used for that, but maybe on a more covert level. But yeah, have a look at it, and we can talk about that a bit more at a later date, really. Some of the other things someone wanted us to look at was, would we revisit ethics? And we've talked about this numerous times, and it's a bit of a sticky subject, really, ethics within remote viewing, because, well, there are no guidelines. There's a guideline, if anyone doesn't know this, and I'll put a post in the I'll put the link to this in the post here. IRVA have an ethical guideline, which I'm going to post here. But interestingly, it's only an ethical guideline for remote viewers. And I was thinking about it when I read it the other day. It would be interesting if their guideline also encompassed project managers and remote viewing trainers as well. At the moment, it's just singling remote viewers out and saying remote viewers have to be ethical in everything they do, and it gives what they class as a guideline for how remote viewers should behave. But I think that should also be extended towards how project managers and remote viewing trainers should have to behave as well. Other than that, there's loads of debates on Facebook and stuff all the time. There've been several this week on on ethics and stuff. I don't know if I have anything more to say to it, other than it's a bit of a mess, to be honest. I think we're all individuals. We just have to go by our own rule book. I try, I have to be honest. I ethically do things that I think sometimes might be on the bad level, in that when I'm looking at cryptos and stuff, like every time I look at a crypto target, I look inside what I think is the mind, the thoughts, the feelings of the primary, or I call them the primary, but they're the CEO behind that crypto. Some people may think I'm crossing an ethical line by doing that kind of thing. So I have to be honest, I'm a bit of a cowboy in that I do feel I crossed the line, and same when I did missing people targets as well. I did 250 of those, and on several occasions I was tasked by many police forces and even the FBI on occasion to try to find a missing person, but not a victim. The missing person in some of the cases was the actual person they felt was the perpetrator, which I did. I gave information, gave GPS coordinates and location information, but I also had a bit of a strange feeling about that because it's all US based, but I know there's someone that the police are looking for, but until they've been, identified and taken to court, they haven't been convicted at this point in time. So is it right using remote viewing skills to hunt down someone that's innocent at that point in time because they haven't been convicted? So I had ethical questions on that as well. I can't tell you guys how to work, other than I try to live my life RV wise, where doing things where I don't do any harm to anyone. That's the only ethical thing I think I can live by. I may mess up on occasion, I don't know, but that's how I try to do my RV, and I would hope that you guys would as well. Yeah, so do you guys have anything you want to say on ethics? I know Jim's got his hand up. Would that be for this? No. Anyone got anything they want to talk about on ethics, or can we go to what Jim, because he's got his hand up and we're running out of time on this a bit?
I have a slight thing on ethics, just about what I was saying before about how I feel I was stalked and that these people were using RV. So the ethics, I think, is a real concern because I don't think that's ethical what they were doing to me. Mm-hmm. It depends on your intention. If you're working for the police, I think that's you're looking for someone who hurt someone. That's ethical. You can
allegedly
hurt
someone at this point, though. That's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not been proven.
And even
that's
so,
what
though,
worries me.
it's your intention is to find the person that hurt someone. And so I would say probing someone with that intention, you're not going to hurt them doing that. Whereas the people that were doing this to me, they had the intention they were suppressing my visions in yoga. They were following me to yoga, probing me. And when I would start to have a vision, they would make it stop. And I couldn't figure out, I thought I kind of knew someone's doing this. And other things too, but they were trying to make me fall down the stairs, things like this. So it depends on your intention, in my opinion. And if you've got a bad intention, it's not ethical. But if you're probing someone who's potentially innocent, but your intention is to find the guilty person, I would say that I personally would find that no problem with that. Personally, I would like to probe the people that were probing me. I've been looking for them.
Maybe I'll run a poll on this on the Facebook group and see what people think. It might be easier if we run a poll with some answers in there and people can anonymously answer and stuff on that. Front loading, we covered that a little bit. I mean, front loading, this is a topic I was asked to discuss, but I think that needs probably a good hour or two on its own to look at that, because there are ways. I do as you guys probably know, I do lots of real world. I've been for 5 years now working full time as a remote viewer, and a proportion of the work we do is what I would class front loading. When I do a crypto viewing target for a crypto, I know I'm working on a crypto, but I also know it's one of 28,000 cryptos. So it's a very small. I wouldn't say it's a very small pool. It's a small pool of target possibilities, but I'm still trying to identify one out of 28,000. The reason I use front loading in those regards is by knowing it's a crypto target rather than any target anywhere in time and space. It allows me then to change how I use CRV. So my CRV instantly changes, and the ideograms then go into instantly morph into showing me the market flow of the crypto, and everything I do with them based around the CRV for knowing it's a crypto is all about finding financial information about the target. So I can by that small amount of front loading, it allows me then to really adapt my remote viewing towards that. And it was the same when I did missing people as well. I always knew it was a missing person target because then I could change my whole way I did CRV to providing the one piece of information the police wanted off me, which was a GPS coordinate. So I think there are applications, especially in real world, where a little bit of specific information up front, but not enough information to completely tell you target is really good for operational use. But under other regards, especially when you're doing practice sessions or training, I wouldn't go anywhere near front loading. But we can talk about that more on another date, I think. Jimmy, your hand's up. Did you actually have something you wanted to share?
Yes, I wanted to ask you. I enjoyed the interview you just did recently with the psychic woman who lives in New York City, who's friends with Ingo.
Paula.
I thought it was Paul, I thought it was great. She asked, or you mentioned a question to her, which I never heard you mention before, a response, which was Ingo gave you a test before he would allow you to have a conversation with, I guess, or something along that line. Was it an RV test, or is it just a general?
He did several things. He did several things. He always did one thing before he went anywhere near anyone, where you had to give him all your personal details of the exact moment you were born and stuff. He would actually do your astrology chart.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So he would use that for most people. And in fact, a lot of his astrology charts for some quite famous people are actually in the Ingo Swan archives. So if you know anything about astrology, you could have a look at those, and they're very in depth. You know, they're very ornate as well. You know, they're all the charts with all the little lines. I don't understand it, to be honest, but it's all there. So he would do that. And then he would have this other test where he would let you inside of his house. And when I pulled up outside of his, he was sat on his, what they call the stoop, sat on his steps with Bob Durant having a coffee. And you had to spend a few minutes out there while he was sizing you up and down with his intuition, and then he would decide in that moment whether he would actually let you through the doors into his house. Yeah.
He said, was he really a character like I hear about people that have either worked with him at one time? I don't mean in a negative way, but just quite the personality. Is that really him then?
Yeah, but bear in mind, I only spent a good part of a day with him, and he was, it was purposely done because he was near, we knew he was near the end of his life, kind of thing. I didn't know why, but I knew that he was getting to that stage where he'd had enough. But he was still a character, the way he smoked his cigars and laughed and stuff. And he was quite commanding. Like he wrote a statement for me, and it's on my website, a statement about, and he said you can use this as you see fit, and do what you want with it. And he did have me stand up, and he chucked it across the table to me, and he did have me stand up and read it out to him. And I haven't done that since I was at school for anyone. So that was a bit of a weird, awkward moment.
Right. That's
but
cool.
Yeah. I've never in my life, and I've met all kinds of psychics and clairvoyants,
Sure.
and at psychic churches and mediums. There, I've never met anyone quite like the personality from Ingo. It was very, very different. Very commanding.
And the one Paula, she's another one that's really interesting to listen to. I really enjoyed that. She probably can you get her on like one of these events, because she's so
well. In fact, she's liking the exposure so much that late in January she's willing to come on and speak to you guys and answer all your questions.
Oh, great. Yeah, that could be fun.
So, it's probably going to be late in January. I don't know what date it will be. I'll have to have a look, see what Friday it is. But yeah, so late in January she's going to come on and be the guest on a Friday chat as well. And awesome. She has some great gossip and stuff which she accidentally let slip out at times, about all that time with Ingo, because, you know, she was essentially, or Ingo used to introduce her as his girlfriend.
Right, yeah.
For a number of years, and his mother was convinced that they were going to get married at one point.
Hey, Daz, I heard that those charts, the astrological charts that he did, were actually pretty accurate on some of those people. Like I heard he had like Greer in there, and some personalities that are kind of interesting.
There are, and I can't remember exactly, but there's some really famous people in there as well. Yeah, I've only seen about 20 of them. There may be more in the archives that I haven't seen, because it's not an area that I'm attuned to, so I don't scan everything. They look beautiful, but I don't know what I'm reading when I'm looking at them, if I'm honest with you. But yeah, he was, you know, really into that, and I think there may even be a couple of manuscripts for a couple of books that he wrote on all that as well that haven't been published.
Cool. Well, thanks again, and have a good holiday, everybody.
Yeah, just before we go as well, over the next couple of days, I will be getting, actually, I can show it to you. I'll be getting the next 8 martinis out as well. So this is it at the moment. I'm having a website problem at the moment for 8 martinis, so it's down at the moment for maintenance. As soon as it's up in the next couple of days, I'll have this out, and you guys can have a look at it. But it's packed for the loads of really interesting articles there from those guys, and including David, who's here tonight as well. We wrote a great review there of John Knoll's latest ARV book. But it's got a great, I can give you a quick preview of it. It's got a great thing here on Ingo Swann and what he did about remote viewing the pyramids. And I did lots of research on it and found out what he did. And, you know, there's a picture of Ingo there at the pyramids and stuff. But then what I've included is letters to back up his research, and Ingo's actual RV sessions live when he was at the pyramids, and then another project later on, which is in the back here. And we don't get to see these very often, but it's an actual project that Ingo ran as a project manager with other psychics. And one of the psychics was Paula, from what we were talking about the other night. I think another one was Bob Durant, and I haven't been able to track down the other 4 or 5. So it's one of these reports here. And some of the stuff Ingo claims that they found in these reports is pretty mind-blowing. You know, some kind of weird cybernetic archive under the pyramids, all kind of life forms there protecting it, alien and other artifacts, all kinds of tunnels and strange stuff and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that'd be a good read if anyone's interested in that kind of stuff. And that should be out in literally within a couple of days now. So that's probably it for tonight, guys. We're approaching, dead on 2 hours. I just want to thank you all for coming. It's been a great chat again, lots of varied subjects. This will probably be the last one for this year because we're approaching Christmas now and everyone does their thing. But as we discussed, definitely at the end of January, we'll have Paula along, and you can ask all the questions about what she does with her psychic stuff, her ghost work, and work, living and working with Ingo for a long period of time and everything else. So, thanks everyone for sharing. Have a great Christmas and a great break, and we'll get together again in the new year. And, the Facebook group's open all the time to just answer stuff on there. And if you have the inclination as well, I definitely recommend the Reddit and the Discord remote viewing groups as well. The links are all over Facebook, but Discord is a very lively place. And there's most evenings you'll find 8 to 10 remote viewers there willing to talk all kinds of stuff with you on there. So have a great holiday, everyone. Thanks
you too. Thank you, Daz. Do you remember where that article is on the moon, where Ingo viewed the moon? Because I want to show it to my mom.
The one I published is on 8martinis.com in the magazine, the last magazine.
Great, I've got it in my books then. Thanks, because I forgot where it was.
Just be aware that the website's down for maintenance. They're having problems with it for the last 24 hours, so I don't know when it's going to be back up.
That's okay, but I'll send it to her for Christmas. I was telling her about the Doma. Yeah.
She'll like that, yeah.
I know. Okay, well, have a great Christmas, everybody.
And you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for the invite.
Night. Thank you, Daz.
See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.